Hi everyone, my name is Vincenzo Berghella. Welcome once again to AJOG MFM, the Pink Journal live stream event. It is my great pleasure today to have Kavita joining us. We're going to talk about happiness, and the smiles will fly very widely today. Kavita, why don't you introduce yourself, and thanks for being with us.
Now, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much, Dr. Berghella, for having me and for this opportunity. So, my name is Kavita Narang. I am a maternal fetal medicine specialist at the Pediatrics Medical Group in Maryland, and I'm also a certified physician mindset empowerment life coach. That is I call that my passion project that I do on the side. And as like Dr. Berghella, I'm very passionate about talking about happiness and helping uplifting other people and inspiring people to be happy and live their best lives. A little background about me. I'm, like Dr. Berghella as well, not really from the United States, born and raised in Bangkok, Thailand, did my medical school there, and then, moved to the US to do my residency, my fellowship, which I graduated in 2022. And here I am. And I'm just excited and looking forward to this conversation today.
Thanks for being with us. Tell me, what is a life coach? Maybe a lot of people don't really know, and what got you into that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great question. So I think, for me, my journey started when I graduated fellowship. I really believe that in life, we must set our values, our vision, and our life purpose on something that inspires us, aligns with our values, plays to our strengths, and ultimately serve a bigger purpose, right? Ultimately serve a purpose to help other people. This is the big picture. And I feel for the past 14 years of my life, right? You go from medical school to residency to fellowship. All of us in medicine, we are all very ambitious, always working towards the next big goal. But when I graduated fellowship, it felt like, okay, this is it. Like what's next? What's my next big purpose? So I wanted to really look for something that I was passionate about. And I'm always someone that's been passionate about personal growth, self-development. And now as an attending, I had a lot more time on my drive to work. I had, an hour commute each way. And I used to just listen to all these books on mindset and empowerment and hear how life coaching, like in athletes or in the business world, how it really helps people unlock their fullest potential. And I felt like in medicine, I could see a shift for myself internally, listening to these conversations. It was very empowering. And I really felt like as doctors, we work so hard. We're expected to perform at the top of our game all the time. But we're not having these important conversations that truly forms the foundation of allowing us to align, our personal values with our professional duties. So I thought, hey, I see this gap, and these are conversations that I want to see doctors have more of. So I said, maybe I should do this. And so I said, well, if I'm going to do it, I want to do it professionally. So I started to explore how can I create a platform to have these conversations professionally with other doctors, to help them. And then that's how I came across life coaching, because on these podcasts, there are a few of my favorite podcasts I listen to, like the Mel Robbins podcast or Diary of a CEO or the Jay Shetty on Purpose. These are some of my favorites, and a lot of the conversations there, I realized that it all involved coaching. So I decided, hey, I'm going to get certified as a life coach. And what coaching really is it's not therapy, it's not consulting. It's basically someone coming to you. You already have all the answers in you, but maybe you didn't know those things about yourself, but you have someone coming to you and asking you the right questions so you can get the right answers that you didn't even know you needed to hear at that time for yourself. It's a process of helping you get to know yourself better, because I think that truly forms the foundation of creating a happy life for yourself, and then living in alignment with your values and your strengths. So that's really how I came about doing life coaching. And yeah, and I think my vision is to continue to have these conversations more in the medical circle and empower people to be happier. And when I went into life coaching, this is actually why I'm really excited about our conversation today. Was, like I said, I read a lot of resources and materials, and then I came across this incredible book right here on happiness, which is your book, which, especially when you're talking to the scientific community on these topics, I think it's important to be able to back up what you're talking with science, and I think you've just done a phenomenal job with this book, because when I read this book, first of all, thank you for putting this piece of work out into the world, because it is so important. And the way you have been able to back up everything that is what mindset, understanding and learning about your own mindset is about with science, is just profound. So I'm really excited to hear and discuss a lot more with you about this book later today.
Thanks, Kavita. I am really impressed, by you being a life coach, and I want to learn in these sessions, myself, and I hope many others will learn. Similarly to what you said, one of the things I talk about, getting into happiness. Like one of the next book I want to write, it's evidence-based life.
Mm.
I wrote that happiness book, but there's, like you said, there is a science to this. We wrote a lot of scientific articles and books, etc. But we, for example, brush our teeth because, as I often show this slide, there is good evidence, many randomized studies, 40,000 people randomized, that brushing your teeth is helpful. You don't have caries. And we also do dental floss because that helps on top of toothbrushing. And I'm going to
Mhm.
make a few people blush. Maybe they haven't dental floss this morning. I have, and it's really important. And I think life coaching that you got into, and the evidence for happiness are there. That's what got me, for example, to get into happiness. I When I talk about happiness, I ask people, "Do you want to be happy?" And usually, most people, put their hands up and say, "I want to be happy." But how? There is science into that. We're all a little bit different. I discover our DNA makes us a little bit different. Our upbringing makes us even more different. But I'm so happy I found somebody like you who's interested in kind of leading an evidence-based life, being a life coach for others, like you have, so altruistically, but also for yourself and for the world, so to speak. So
Mhm.
let's get a little bit more into the details. Again, we're kind of try to help people find happiness in life and in our field in OBGYN, and maybe you can go over some of the objectives, of what we're gonna, talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Yeah, so, for our listeners right now, our objectives today really is to discuss the evidence based principles and foundation of happiness. Dr. Berghella in this book highlights 6 key principles, and I think those really summarize what creates a harmonious life. So we'll go over all of those, at our own pace, and, be able to share stories and try to make this relatable to everyone as well, and to emphasize why happiness is important for your success and your well-being. It's happiness comes before success, not the other way around, right? And I think before happiness and success also, it's who you are, getting to know who you are, so understanding that concept. And but the biggest message that, I think the objective of our talk is to empower people to realize that they are responsible, that you listeners are responsible for your own happiness, and you can choose to create that. And we'll hopefully leave you with some practical tools and tips that you can take with you to empower yourself through that as well.
That's great. So important, and it may take us more than one session to cover
Right.
this because there is so much evidence on this issue, and lots of evidence to cover. In fact, let me share something that people may not know. There are lots of books about happiness. Not only the one Kavita was talking about, but they're great books. This book,
Mhm.
Basic Happiness, is really good. But there are even scientific journals. You may read the pink or the green or the gray and the blue, all the great OBGYN journals, the white. But there's a Journal of Happiness Studies, a Journal of Happiness and Wellbeing, an International Journal of Happiness and Development. Obviously, we'll talk about positive psychology.
Mhm.
So this is not something you've studied, I've studied, but there are randomized studies, there are Lancet articles, there are New England
Right.
articles. This is something that has been researched quite a bit.
Right. Dr. Breakala, if I may start off by asking you, just jumping right in a little bit here. What is your definition of happiness? How would you define happiness?
Yeah, so this is, after a lifetime of searching for that answer, again, both scientifically and personally. And I think really happiness is striving after somebody's potential. Like you said, it's. I used to think, I grew up on a beach town, small beach town in Italy, and my culture was like, happiness is laying on a beach, do
Mm,
nothing, watch other people go by
mm,
yourself,
mm.
which I really have finally realized is not happiness.
Uh-huh.
Happiness, it's very different. And some people have defined it. There's a great researcher, the How of Happiness. So a positive mood now, and as we're having kind of we're in flow, and a positive outlook for the future, a sense that our life, we're leading a life that is good, meaningful, worthwhile. But again, the best one, I think, is the best definition is the joy we feel striving after our own potential. So whatever it is that drives us, we found it. You were talking about before. We kind of have to find out who we are first, and then find that happiness inside and strive after it. I will
Mm-hmm.
talk a lot. I think we'll have some about strengths. For example, there's
Yeah.
something called the Gallup
Yeah.
Strength Survey, GALLUP Strength Survey. Do that for the people listening. Do that survey, and it tells you what kind of what
Right.
you like. What you're good at and what you like. Listen, for example, to people. If you give a good lecture and they say, "Oh, that was a good lecture," and you had fun during that lecture, that means that's something you like. That's
Mhm.
something you enjoy. You counseled the patient really well. You were so empathic. You did a great, scientific manuscript came out. I read it. Congratulations, and you liked it. So you got the pat in the back, and
Mhm.
you did something that you were in flow for, or you were kind of
Mhm.
born to do. That's happiness. And again, I like this other quote here: happiness does not depend on what happens outside of you, but what happens inside of you. Something that you really, not what your mom wants you to do, not what
Mhm.
your boss wants you to do, but something that you really want to. So it's really important to say no to lots of stuff in life,
Right.
so that you can say yes to yourself. Um, we're the only country, I think, still that has the pursuit of happiness, in its constitution, thanks to a good Philadelphian, Ben Franklin. But he also say that the Constitution only gives people the right to pursue happiness. You have to catch it yourself.
Mhm.
We have this freedom in this country and in most of the world, thankfully, to do what we like, and we should pursue it. We can't just sit on the side again, lay on the beach. Again, the
Mhm.
weather may be nice. Maybe we have a nice drink, and we are like all that. But really, we have to go and catch. Even Aristotle, a couple
Mhm.
thousand, if more than a couple thousand years ago, said that happiness is an activity rather than an emotional state. And again, one of the most famous happiness researchers say that happiness is not something that happens to people, but something that they make happen. It's really this concept of being active in life. I try to
Mhm.
pass it to my kids. Now I have four, and if you want something to happen, you have to go after it. I don't know if you have the same experience. If you want to expand on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And I want to highlight on the fact that, how you said, laying on the beach in Italy. You tell that to any person, you're like, oh yeah, I grew up laying there.
Right.
Anyone would say that sounds like a perfect, happy life.
Yeah.
But I think that's the difference we're trying to point out here, is that that is an external source of happiness. It's not driving anything internally for you.
Right.
So it's not going to be a long lasting happiness. It's not something you can always go back to. But if you work on developing your internal happiness, no matter what your external looks like, you're going to be happy. And I think that's, if correct me if I'm wrong, but what inspired you to pursue your ambitions so fiercely and made it to where you are, because you had that internal drive. You knew what put you in the state of flow was doing the work that you were doing, the activity, um, you know, for you. I think for me,
Not everybody's the same, but you remind me of something, and Kavita. One of the worst times in my life, I remember I tell this story often, was in high school. So
High
in high
school.
school, we were all driven, we're all, straight A students. This was obviously in Italy. And, I would go to school at the time, you finish around 1:30, come home. And then I did my homework as efficiently and quickly as I could, in a couple of hours. And then it would be, 3, 4 o'clock. And then I go play soccer, for a
Oh,
couple of hours and destroy myself with my friends in the park nearby. And then will come 6 o'clock. And, that time dinner was 8 p.m., in Italy. And those 2 hours, I didn't know what to do. It would kill myself, because I didn't have any more homework. Sometimes, actually, I would ask, that's how crazy I was, for extra math homework. I like math so much that I would do extra math homework. But if I didn't have any, I had done it the day before. My dad was still at work. My sister, my brother were studying or were too young. Um, the boredom killed myself. I think isolation and boredom,
mhm,
we're going to take the positive side, in
mhm,
these sessions. We're not going to talk much about depression and
mhm.
you know, the burnout that we have in medicine, because we want to look at the other side. And the other side is being active,
Right.
and certainly being on the beach for a little bit, it's fine. Uh, but as we'll see, most of it is probably, you're going for a swim, you're
Mm.
enjoying a chat with friends, you're reading a nice book, you're doing something that is active, being isolated with nothing to do. I think it's scientifically proven not to be happiness.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And thanks for sharing that story. And activity is it really what drives. And I think for me, identifying my state of flow was so, I grew up in Bangkok, Thailand. It's a Buddhist country. And a big part of our culture is giving, and you've been to Thailand, right, Dr.
Yeah,
Berghella?
yeah, I've been to Bangkok. I love it.
Yeah,
All the
yeah. So,
tuk-tuks and the traffic and the
right.
amazing culture and great food. I love Thailand. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So a big part of a culture is giving. So even early morning, you might have seen where people will come out and make merit, where they will give food to the monks and stuff. It's just an act of giving that is instilled in our culture very early on. And I remember the first time that I really felt the power that and the joy that comes from giving was so as a kid, every time it was our birthday or any family member's birthday, we would always go to an orphanage, and we would go feed the children at the orphanage. That's just our family tradition. Or we would go, to like an elderly home, sort of, for the old people that didn't really have families anymore, and we would go give them milk or feed them. And I remember this feeling so vividly even until today, like that joy that you get from giving, and you realize it's an act, it's an activity, not an act, sorry, but like an activity. The act of giving or helping someone is gives you unparalleled joy. I think that was what really set the foundation for me to understand what happiness is. Until today, I think that's, like in medicine, you're helping, you're doing something for someone. And so anytime it always set the stage for me that whenever I set a goal to do something in life, as long as it is to serve somebody else, to serve someone else, it will fulfill me internally too. And I
That's a concept, Kavita, actually, that it's in every religion. We're not going to
right,
go religious here. We're going to talk
yeah,
about religion later on because having, a spiritual life is associated
right,
with happiness. Um, but that concept of, doing into others what you would like to do to you, so being altruistic, is in every religion,
hmm,
the Jewish religion, in the Buddhist religion,
absolutely, right.
Hindu, and Christian. It's so important, and it's also, like you said, evidence based, and that is done usually in a social
Hmm,
interaction.
right,
You're helping others. You're volunteering in a soup chicken to a kitchen to help others. Um, you are improving the science so that somebody can have a better pregnancy. You
mhm,
are teaching one of your fellows or students, so that they can be a bit better doctors, so they can save more lives and improve lives. The concept, that's why we're lucky to be in medicine, because
right,
we are in a very altruistic uh,
hmm,
profession. I always joke around, and it's not really a joke, that we're in the best profession in the world.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a profession that allows us to be with others and to help others constantly, all day
Mm-hmm.
long, with all the activities that we're doing, being clinical directly, but
Mm-hmm.
also education and research.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Berghella, you are a scientist, a physician, a writer, and you excel in all of those really amazingly. I'm really curious, this book especially on happiness. What inspired you to write this book? And where were you in your life? What point of your life or career were you? And how did this idea come about? And what's the story behind it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. First thing I think about it actually. So I think a lot of it comes from being a learner, from
Mhm.
like, what my number one strength. I want to study all the time and find out. And obviously, we all want to, strive to be happy. I think I was raised in a culture somewhat traditionally that had some principles that were not, you know, um, correct. And, for example, I studied really, really hard for many years by myself, without others, and slowly, I took some leadership classes, and I was like, no, no, you do much better as a team. You shouldn't be by yourself. You shouldn't do a study or talk to the patient. Like, if you do it together, it's much better.
Mhm.
And so I began to read some leadership, and some happiness books.
Mhm.
And as I read them, I'm like, people don't know this.
Mhm.
People don't even realize what makes them happy.
Mhm.
What is that makes people happy? They don't know. Like a lot of my friends, not only at at work, but my nieces and nephews, or in-laws, or do they if they realize what's in it for them. And then I'm like, maybe some of these concepts I'm reading and learning about should be better organized, for and so, I had written so many scientific books,
Right.
where you go from, diagnosis and management and therapy, etc. I'm like, let me organize this and find and tell people what makes them happy. That's I think what, and I think an altruistic, when I write, I think it's both selfish and altruistic, meaning I teach myself a lot. When I'm writing, I'm in flow, so that makes me happy itself. My ideas kind of get shape, and finally they're organized. And then I do it for others. Obviously, it's an altruistic thing. In
Mhm.
fact, I have probably donated more books that I've sold, uh, since I've given out so many. But then I live it. I think another thing is, I wrote this, a few years ago. Then I try to live it. Like, I remember it all the time, and
Um,
most every day I think about it. I really think about those principles.
so you basically are life coaching yourself through this. It's just your
Yeah,
way of doing it,
in a
actually.
way.
Right? Yeah, because I think that's what it is about, is reading things or hearing about these things and then reflecting, right? At the end of the day, it comes down to deep reflection and
Yeah.
see how can you apply it to yourself to unlock that happiest part of you. And that's kind of basically what you did. Yeah. So, I would love to just like maybe we can dive into, in your book you highlight six concepts of, that are the foundations of happiness. And I think you start with talking about social interactions. If you Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how that has shaped happiness in your life too?
Yeah, 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 yeah. The I keep on hammering all the time. Once I find something out, like, does cerclage work, progesterone work, or should I have a vaginal delivery, or C-sections? Then I try to hammer the science so that people get inspired to go to the next level. But
Right.
one thing that it's in many books, and it's early in the book I wrote, the number one key is social relationship and social ties to happiness. And we'll go over that in detail. And then maybe in some of the next sessions, the six goals are also doing what you like to do, having goals with meaning, working hard. Like, we've talked about it as well, not laying down, but working hard and being engaged in whichever goal and a happiness you're looking for. And then eventually gaining a pat in the back. But social relationships by far are the key. And I know your husband well. Hello, Tori. I think having a significant others that is supportive, it's so important. We'll talk about love maybe, later in the spring or next summer, whenever time
Mhm.
allows. But it's so important to have, a partner, and to
Oh.
have a family that is supportive. I see too many of us, unfortunately, we get burned out because we don't spend enough time. One of my biggest accomplishment, I think, Kavita, is that these two older sons, Andrea and Pietro, never complained that I wasn't home enough.
Mhm.
I try to be home always by 5. I went to countless, swimming, rowing, soccer, basketball. They played, Division 1 and 3 college
Wow.
stuff. And I never missed anything. Maybe when they were swimming, and had their head down in the water, I was also writing an article. I must admit, but the time going there, the time coming back. I was with them. I was enjoying. They were telling me about their girlfriends or their first loves, or their first things,
Oh,
and
that's
then
beautiful.
even the extended family, in what, 10 days from now, even less than 10 days, I'll see my 86-year-old mom. My extended families, my in-laws, my brother, my sister, etc. And having that support. Um,
Mm.
the social relationship is so important. These are Andrea and Pietro are now 6'4" and 6'8" when they were small. And I always say you can only be as happy as your unhappiest child. Um, and it's really true that all that matters in life is for your kids to do well. If
Mm.
they're not happy, I cannot be happy, if there is
Mm.
an issue, with their life. And thank God they're very happy. They're excellent young careers. As you can see here, they call me Piccoletto. I'm the young and the shortest one, despite being myself 6'3". And and uh, and it's good. And those social relationships obviously go outside the family as well.
Mm.
This is again Pietro in the middle. Uh, this friends, Malcolm on our right, and August on his left, are still, and Ming are still his best friends. And he sees them all the time. He's now in New York.
Mhm.
But strives to see them all the time. He comes back, to Philly all the time. And then, I hope we get to talk a lot about social relationships. I think home is more important.
Mhm.
But work, this is the MFM division, part actually of the MFM division. It's a little
Nice.
um, Jeffrey, it's so important, that Huda and Carrie and Rupsha and Rodney and Modi and Amanda are happy. That our fellows, are are thriving. That the same way this morning, I come to work happy, ready to spend some time with them. This morning I was very happy to spend some time with you, obviously, and then when 4:30, 5 o'clock, 5:30, whatever comes, happy to run back home.
Mhm.
So important. Let me talk also about mentors. uh,
Mhm.
Really important. This has all to do with social relationships.
Right.
Go under somebody's wing and fly with them. I flew when I was much younger, even younger than you, under Ron Wapner's wing. I hope I helped Jason Baxter and many others' careers. They taught me, the junior people taught me, the senior people taught me. To teach like we're doing today is to
Mhm.
learn, um, to mentor others. Like today, as I said, I'm going to learn as much from you, probably more than the vice versa. And like we said about, you said it beautifully, um, on um, on what happiness is giving others. Uh,
Mhm.
so at this point of my career in particular, um, success is assisting others in their achievement. So we're going to SMFM, right, in February. Can't wait, at the Gaylord, near Washington.
Yep. Mhm.
I don't want to present anything, but I'm going to glow in the many orals posters that my colleagues, have. I don't even care anymore if my name is there or not there. But the ideas were floated. We worked on it together. And then, the idea flies by itself, and you don't care anymore. who gets the praise. The important thing is that, again, in our case, pregnant women and children
Right.
um, do better. Uh,
Mhm.
any thoughts on that? I don't want to monopolize this.
No, no, no. I think those are all, absolutely important. And you're right. Social relationships end up forming the foundation because we as human beings, right? Like we are hardwired to connect, right? That's why, those social relationships uplift us, and also choosing to surround ourselves with the social relationships that are positive, that are uplifting, and recognizing that you can you can change the temperature of the room too. When you walk into the room, that
So,
is I think that is one lesson I've come to learn, because sometimes people are like, well, the work environment is toxic, it's negative, and sometimes we're constantly waiting for things around us to change, but recognizing, hey, we have that power to change the temperature of the room, to be the one that brings happiness into a social setting, and just do that. And because human beings, we're not only hardwired to connect, we mirror each other. That's human behavior. Like if you walk in, you're upset, I walk in, I start being happy, you might be annoyed for the first minute, but then you will eventually somehow mirror some of that, and it will bring out, and if everyone does that for each other, you just create this energy of happiness. What are you seem like you had
yeah. A couple of thoughts came around on that. So there's good science. There's
yeah.
great science on the fact that if you smile, the other person who's looking at you, hormones and
Yeah.
and chemicals inside of them change.
Yeah.
Their cortisol decreases, their dopamine, all the good hormones, oxytocin increases.
Yeah.
A smile. And if I make you a little happier, then the rest of the day you make other people's happy. It's like the old story, a little butterfly moves, in
Right.
Maryland, and then there's a whatever, a tsunami in hopefully not, in Asia. It's really so powerful, and people have to understand that. People sometimes actually, Kavita, people have accused me to be too happy,
I've got that too.
and
Yeah.
and you can probably see why. But I do it on purpose still, because I do think that I can make a positive change. You
Mm.
talked about mirroring, and
Hmm.
there's a lot of science to that. In fact, there are mirror neurons. There are
Hmm.
neurons in our brain. They're called mirror neurons. So we're lucky enough to have a 3 month old now, Julia. And as you know, when you're 2, 3, you begin to smile, and she's smiling quite a bit. Um, it's amazing. She does a smile, then you smile.
Uh-huh.
She begins to
Smile.
smile. She makes you smile more, because you have a 3 months old little girl. I have 3 older boys. I always dreamed about having a girl. Finally have one, and she's smiling back at you. And then your smile gets bigger. She's smiling more. Like it's
Right.
it's contagious, and it's scientifically proven. And we go through ups and downs in life. I certainly have had mine, and there are sometimes you have to grieve, maybe even get psychological and psychiatric
Mhm.
support, maybe even be on medicine, have people around you to support you, and everything else. But if you can, um, for example, maybe you can talk about the three grateful things that
Mhm.
we did recently at the leadership course.
Right.
Why don't you talk about that? Actually, that's, I think, a good point to put that in. What is that?
The I think when you talk about happiness, right? I think one thing that has been scientifically proven over and over again, the thing that when you're feeling, if you're in a moment that you're feeling down and you're feeling low, the best way, the easiest practical tool to snap yourself out of it is gratitude, right? I
Yeah,
think that's what it is. It's you are rewiring your brain you know to go back to feeling, once you're grateful about something, you are able to be happier in the moment without even realizing. So I think, like in the leadership course, we talk about starting our morning with, like, write down three things we're grateful for. I know we all left with our little happiness journal that we left with, and every day just wake up, or even if you do it at the end of the day, just making it an intentional practice in the evening where you're like, okay, I'm going to write down three things that I am grateful for. And actually, the act of writing, not just thinking, because when you're writing, especially when you're feeling sad, there's signs for this. When you're feeling sad or upset or not having a very good day, the part of your brain that's activated is your limbic system, right? You're emotionally hijacked. And to be able to get out of that state of being emotionally hijacked, you want to fire up the neurons in your cerebral cortex, the frontal lobe, not your limbic. So, how do you change the wiring to get your frontal lobe to work? You write. And that's exactly the same reason journaling works so great. That's why writing. So, just get out a piece of paper and write down three things that I'm grateful for right now, and you will see there is, an internal shift that does happen when you do those things, right? Any thoughts about that, Dr. Berghella?
No, it's therapeutic. Writing for me,
Yeah.
Kavita, is therapeutic, and I think it can be for lots of you listening.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and concentrating on the positive side, like you said, you could maybe write about three negative things that happened today, but why don't you write about the three positive ones
Mm-hmm.
and remember them the next day, and then on a day that it's bad, go back for the week and look at three
Mm-hmm.
things you wrote on Monday, three things good things on Tuesday,
Mm-hmm.
things on Wednesday, and it builds up, and you're like, I have a lot. I have some
Yeah.
people who love me. The basis of my life is good and safe.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, there are a lot of people that are not safe, that
Mm-hmm.
don't have as much support. And be active. If there is something that is not working, you have to be active and seek it. I um, there's so much benefit on working on a team.
Right.
We've talked mostly about personal things, but at work as well. um, Work, for example, with people with skills that you don't have. Like, if you're stuck somewhere and, you cannot do statistics, and, some fellowship directors are going to hate me for this, but, some of us were never born to be good statisticians. And another thing key to happiness is working on your strengths, not your weaknesses,
Right.
which I talk about all the time. So find a good statisticians and bring them on the team.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't like writing, somebody else can write, the paper for you. If you don't like teaching, tell people. But important thing is to work on a team that can let you accomplish things. I'll tell the story about the vaginal ultrasound circulage trial. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I think a lot of my career success is due as much to my social skills as to anything else. Meaning, I remember I was an SMFM one year. I had done a small 61 patients randomized trial circulage, which was negative, published in the Great Journal a few years ago. And there were a couple of other, small trials. But the NIH with Joan Owen was doing this vaginal sensor clash trial, $10 million or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
was, major trial. And they had started already, and I go to John. We were good friends. We were sharing data and everything. And I said, John, I know you started and you're doing well. Do you need more help? I can help maybe randomize. We're done with our study. And he said yes. And that's how I got to be part of that. Eventually, there was a larger study. The p-value was zero point 0.09, so it was negative. And what changed it was the meta-analysis after. And I could only do that because of teamwork and social skills.
Mm-hmm.
NIH gave this data, and then back then it was Orion Rust and Siska Alturas from Holland, and the Kybernetic colitis group from London. They gave me all the databases of truly well done randomized trial, and then we saw the difference, and then that study changed every guideline in the world. So not only at work, your significant other, your
Mm-hmm.
family, your friends, but at
Right.
work, your success is 100% due to the how well. So next SMFM, mingle with everybody who's doing
Right.
well on your thing. Another couple of level one evidence: breast cancer. This Lancet. This is a trial. If you have breast cancer, you're randomized to be in a support group versus not being in a formal support.
Mm-hmm.
Your survival is longer for
Yeah.
breast cancer just being in a support group.
Mm-hmm.
And people know this. Losing weight, if I decide, it's before the holidays, I'm going to eat like a pig at Christmas with my mom, etc. If I want to lose, a few pounds in the next 10 days, if I do it with my wife or my best friends or my kids or whatever, or with you, I'm going to have a much, much higher chance of
That's a success.
success than if I just say, I got to lose 3 pounds by myself in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Um, this is evidence-based Lancet, New England Journal, randomized trial. It's not just me and you. Uh,
Hmm.
and I kind of try to remind people all the time of how important this stuff are. Let me share a few more thoughts, and feel free
Yeah,
to
no, please, please.
stop me. This is our team again at Jefferson. Be nice to people, be personal, find connections. Keith is our head sonographer. We talk about Formula One. I remember a few years ago when he began to talk about Formula One. I'm like, I want to talk about, your BPD being good, or your NT, or how this, did you do Dopplers or not? But if we connect about Formula One, which I'm okay fan, he's a huge fan, but I can talk about it. I know something, and that connects us. And then when I
Right.
ask for an extra view, or for Dopplers, or for a 3D or whatever, he does it.
Yeah.
If I want something for myself, maybe I think that my salary, or my bonus, or my hours, or my free time, or non-clinical time is not enough. Ask for the team. Tell, we all need, more money for traveling. It's not just I want this. You ask for the team, and you'll be much more successful.
Right.
You also need to work with people smarter than you. James Watson, who did the DNA
Hmm.
in 1953
Yeah.
prize, he says never be the smartest person in the room. Work with a team, and I have
Hmm.
it here at Jefferson for sure, that is smarter than you. And all of that working together brings, the happiness, oxytocin, and dopamine, etc., and decreases your anxiety and cortisol. It's really, evidence-based and beneficial. And the last point I want to make about this is, once you do that, then the sky, not even the sky is the limit, above the sky.
Yeah.
You can do anything. Maybe you can tell your story about your dad. I certainly had
Mhm.
my mom who loved me unconditionally. This slide, it's, somebody who was very successful politician in Italy, who said that we don't live in a world of giants. Even the president of the U.S., or the accomplished scientist, or they're all humans, just like you and I. And if you
Mhm.
believe in yourself, you work in a team, you can move a mountain.
Mhm.
Mountain can be moved with friends, with a team, and even, whatever dream you ever had, which seemed impossible, um, you can get there just by doing what you like to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what you talked about, being kind and, being nice to people, right? And, and we in our society, we've heard a lot about this random act of kindness, right?
Right.
Everyone talks about that. But I personally prefer intentional act of kindness
Mhm.
more than the word random, because I want people to really think about it, that it doesn't have to be random. I want people to know that they can choose to do that and being intentional. And
Mhm.
when we do that, and you see how good it makes you feel too by being kind to other people, over time it becomes your nature. You intentionally practice something over and over, you become a kind person. And there's this difference between being nice and being kind. I was just having a conversation with Dr. Judith Lewis earlier this week. We caught up for dinner. She was in DC for a meeting, and she actually gave a very nice description of the difference between nice and kind. She was telling me, she said, if your car is broken down, and if you're trying to, and people walks by you and say, hey, oh, I see you, your car's broken down, let me go see if I can find help for you. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry that your car is broken, let me go find help for you. That's someone being nice. But if someone comes over to you and says, hey, I see your car's broken, how can I help you, let me help you, that's being kind. I think there's a little difference, that you can notice there. And I think the more we can try to be intentional about practicing kindness, and we know the world really needs kind and happier people now more than ever. We really need it. It's not a luxury, it's a necessity right now, right? um,
And you get so much more,
mhm.
um, back by giving. Uh,
Yeah.
I'll tell you a quick story. I think maybe the first time I really realized, the concept you just talked about. I was a young teenager, maybe 13, maybe even less, 11,
Mhm.
12. I was very lucky, two loving parents, two wonderful,
Mhm.
a brother, sister. And we actually had a live in Italy. She
Mhm.
did everything for us,
Yeah.
I would
Same.
sit down, I would be served the best
Yeah.
food in the
Yeah.
world, Italian food, amazing, amazing. One day, it must have been winter, it was cold outside, it was raining. I don't know what happened. Maybe she was off, the nanny was off. They said, we should get pizza, we should go down the restaurant. I think that happened really once in my,
Right.
my first 19 years of my life. And I'm the oldest one. And eventually, kind of, I'm not sure I volunteered, Kavita, but somehow it came down to me, you have to go. And it was only 2 blocks, to go get the pizza. I'm like, what the heck? I'm always served by
Yeah.
me, and it's raining and it's cold. I went to get the pizza, and it wasn't easy, again, windy, etc. But the pride of bringing the pizza back to my family, I didn't even pay for it. Just the act, it probably took,
Yeah.
15 minutes, no, no. Um, it really made me realize how nice it is to give to others. And how spoiled and selfish I've been all my life, just sit down. And, for me, when I was young, I would look at the water and they would pour it to me. I would dream of having ravioli on Sunday, and my mom would make it,
Right.
it was that wonderful of an upbringing, and I hope I get the same to my kids. But when you turn it around and you begin to do the dishes and to do the laundry and to help in whichever way, your car break down, and somebody giving, you get a lot back that
Hmm.
receiving. There's a great book. I think, but the guy of Penn here, the name will come back to me. Adam Grant. I think givers and takers.
Hmm.
There are people who are givers. Who naturally are kind, like you say, and altruistic. There are matchers,
Hmm.
and there are many that you and I and many people listening probably know. They're going to do something for you because they know you're going to do something back to them. So they're matching,
Hmm.
and that's fair enough. But there are also sometimes, and it's the minority, takers. Some people that you switched or call for them, and they may not offer to cover your call, or doesn't happen often. It's not that much. Sometimes it's more subtle than that. Um, but it's really important to know who you're dealing with, and I would tell you, you get so much more by being a giver, because then people know that you're a giver, and they want to give back to you, because you gave to them in the first place. um, Takers, all of a sudden, they become isolated. Nobody wants to. It's like how I was in kindergarten, how I was in the play first play dates, or at the first playgrounds. Being nice to others.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're so right. And you talk about the foundation of your family, the loving family, and clearly you do give that. I can see how you give that to your kids and your family. You talk about it all the time, and it's a blessing to have that foundation. And you mentioned earlier about like my dad. I would say for me a very similar story, right? Because I think both of us are from abroad and had this big American dream to pursue our goals in leave everything we know behind. Like I'm 10,000 miles away from my family, right? But I think the foundation that really helped me to take that step, to have the courage to take that step, is the safety and the love that is fostered in childhood, right? I remember, as a kid, I think it's from both my mom and dad. So from my dad, I used to always watch these TV shows with him in the evening. We used to love watching these medical shows. And I used to tell him, I said, oh, one day I want to be like, those doctors. It was always like ER shows or trauma or something. I want to be like them. They're, so amazing. And he's like, yeah, you can do it, and just having someone believe in you so much from a young age really helps you believe in yourself too, that you can accomplish that. And, I think a trait from my mom is she is one person that can see the best in any situation. You can put her in a burning room and she will find a reason to be happy. Like that's her, as as a child. I remember every time I came, if I had any bad situation, I'd be like, oh, this happened. She'll be like, but what about this? She would always very quickly point out the positive for me. And I think I just wired myself to look at the world that way, that no matter what is going on around you, there is something positive. you know. And what I've also come to realize is you can train your brain to do that, and not everyone may have had that foundation. But today, with science showing, neuroplasticity, the whole idea of we can rewire our brain, and I think all this just tells us that it doesn't matter what your foundation or what your childhood was. It's okay because you can give that to yourself today. It's never too late. Back in the day, I think before 1970s, a lot of very common statements were like, oh, you can't teach old dogs new trick, or this is how we've always done it. People had this fixed mindset that the brain develops up until the age of 21, and that's it. Your neurons are fired and it's fixed. But neuroscience and research has shown that that's not true. You can unlearn, relearn, rewire. So the truth is, there's no excuse anymore. You can become any person you want to be. There is science to back that up. It takes intention and practice, but you can. And the same goes for happiness. Some people, so even no matter what your circumstances, you don't blame them, but you say, hey, this is who I am today. I know that this is a possibility. So I'm going to develop the skills to foster that for myself, because regardless of what the past looked like, the future can be a happy one. And I think that's what I really want to empower people to realize, that they can choose it, they can create it, it's possible. It requires unlearning and then relearning your how you respond in different situations, how you think about different situations, the lens you use to view different situations is really what happiness comes down to.
So many thoughts came around when you were talking. One thought, for example, was, there was a period 5, 6 years ago that I was down. I was having a difficult time, and the therapist I saw, the best way he helped me, which was amazing. He would tell me what I was doing. Like I would say, I can't even take care of myself, or I'm not good at anything. I was really down on myself. Um, and he would say, but look, you cooked for yourself. You
Mm,
went shopping. You could do your laundry. You're holding a great job. There's a lot of
yes,
people who admire yourself. And I'm like, well, it's true. I did that. I could do that. I could still, I still have earning, and my kids love me, and a lot of other people love me. And I that's what I think, the unlearning, like that you were talking about, having other people around you who can, when times are difficult, make you realize, the many positives that you bring to the world. For me, like, talked about your dad, for me was the unconditional love that my mother
mm-hmm,
gave me wings. I could move, for myself. I think it's 7,000 miles, 7,000 miles away. She lives inside of me. She gives me so
right.
much happiness and she always told me you can do anything.
Mhm,
And I think that advice is kind of part of my DNA.
mhm,
And then you're kind of purposeful. I guess one of the final thoughts today we can give again is the active part of pursuing happiness.
mhm,
Try to not dwell on the negatives, but dwell on the gratitude, on the positive, and look forward. Another good advice a good friend gave to me in the difficult time is look ahead.
mhm.
you know just because you had the difficult time, and then people have had sometimes a very difficult childhood, very difficult, they were fired, they got divorced, they had a major health issue, major stuff like that. Look ahead. There's good evidence, for example, that if you win the lottery, you win the lottery, I don't. A year from now, we have the same happiness level.
Mhm.
I get a limb amputated, from trauma. You don't, or I become handicapped. Let's say I become a spinal, you know, uh, you know, paralyzed from my, L5 down. In a year from now, you healthy, me paralyzed, same happiness, and it's because how you look at life. You realize that yes, you don't have your legs working anymore, but you have lots of other stuff. You can still write, you can still interact, you can still have your hands. And so whatever difficult times you have, like you said, you can rewire um, your brain. We'll talk about it in the next session, but 50% of happiness and most of our traits is genetic.
Mm-hmm.
Percent, the one you and I and all of us, all of the people listening, 50% you can affect yourself
Mm-hmm.
with the choices you make. The
Right.
best choice I made, I think, in the last couple of weeks was deciding to be with you
No.
today
Thank you.
about happiness. Any thoughts you want to kind of conclude this session with, Kavita, today?
No, thank you, Dr. Berghella. It's absolutely been, it's been amazing. I think we've touched on several different, and I can see we both have like, we were like, our thoughts are firing. We're like, we want to talk about this, and it's amazing. But I think, as we are nearing the new year coming up as well, I think the message I'd want to leave our audience with is, New Year's is such a time for renewal for a lot of people, and people are really sitting down to make their resolutions. And you tend to come up with this list of, I want to lose 10 kgs, I want to get a six-pack, I want to get this promotion, whatever. I just would like to empower our listeners today to put happiness, your happiness, at the top of this list, to prioritize your happiness, and to realize that you are in fact the one that has the power to control your happiness, and it's the ball is in your court. You just have to choose to make that decision. And anytime you're in a bad situation, say, how can I look at this situation differently to put the ball back in my court? And it will be, you will find it, and that will be the foundation for happiness. And if you are happier, all the other resolutions you set out to do will be done with so much more joy. And I think you're more likely to accomplish those too.
Yeah, yeah. So true. So lots to talk about, next time. I think for now we're penciled down January 12th at 8 a.m. Eastern. We'll do happiness number 2. It'll probably take us, 3 or 4 of the sessions to cover
Mm.
everything we have to cover, Kavita. But it has been a pleasure, and thanks to all the people following on Facebook and on X and YouTube and LinkedIn. And thanks, Kavita, for being with us. So we'll see you.
No,
We'll see you
thank
next
you.
time. I guess happy holidays to everyone and happy New Year.
No, thank you so much, Dr. Bergela. This was fantastic. Thank you.